Hi, this is Mad Movie Mark, another Mad Movie Mark movie review. Continuing my top 10 least favorite movies of all time, or my top 10 most disappointing movies of all time, whichever you would like to call it. So far, I have done my number 10 and number 9. Number 10 was Across the Universe, and number 9 was Team America World Police. And now we are getting to number 8. Number 8 is the comedy comedy called MASH. Now, I know that I might be on an island here of my own, and I say this because MASH clearly is a beloved comedy for most people, very critically acclaimed. It spun off a television series that many people consider to be one of the greatest television series of all time. Even today, it's been off the air for decades, and people still consider it to be one of the greatest shows. It had one of the greatest series ending episodes ever. And let me just run through real quick some of its accolades. So on IMDb, it has a 7.4, which is a very respectable number. I would say anything over a 7 is pretty great. If you can get over an 8, that's better, but 7 is good. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score. This is a critic score of 84%, and it has an audience score of 83%. So they are basically the same, and that is very high for a critic and an audience score. It is on AFI's top 100 movies of all time. That's the American Film Institute's top 100 movies of all time at number 56. And it is ahead of such movies as Silence of the Lambs, Rocky, and Unforgiven, which for me cannot be forgiven at all. It's also on AFI's top 100 Years of Laughter, which I believe is their top 100 comedies of all time. At number 7, wow, very high on their top 100 comedies of all time. It's higher than such movies as The Producers, Night at the Opera, which is a Marx Brothers movie that I quite enjoy. Ghostbusters, which I know a lot of people will love. I loved it as well. And The Jerk, which is my favorite comedy of all time, unless you count The Princess Bride as a comedy, then I guess The Jerk would be number 2 of all time. This movie stars Donald Sutherland as Hawkeye, Elliot Gould as Trapper Tom McKenty, Tom Surratt as Duke Forrest, Sally Kellerman as Margaret O'Houlihan. I'm assuming no relation to Patches O'Houlihan from Dodgeball, though she does have to dodge, duck, dip, dive, and dodge some balls in this movie, but it's a different kind of ball. And Robert Duvall, who is Major Frank Burns in this movie. So a rough synopsis of this movie is Donald Sutherland and Elliot Gould are kind of the focus of most of the movie. They are both surgeons in the army, so this movie takes place in the army. I think it's some sort of military service. I believe it's the army, and Sally Kellerman is a major in the army. Robert Duvall is also a major in the army, and Tom. I'm not going to pronounce his name right. Tom Surratt is also in the army as well. So basically, Donald Sutherland, Elliot Gould, and Tom are surgeons. So this movie essentially it has two parts that it alternates with throughout the entire movie. The first part would be the surgeons who are performing life-saving procedures in the army of wounded soldiers. Basically, it shows the horrors of war. It'll have like guts everywhere, and they're trying to stop bleeding, and then it'll transition to scenes of people acting foolish and playing pranks on each other, kind of to show how they deal with this atrocities, with these horrors that they have to go through, and then it'll transition again basically to another scene of surgery and operations, and then to another scene of horseplay, basically. And that's basically the whole movie. So it's trying to show the horrors of war and then what the soldiers do in order to combat these horrors, how they have to play jokes on each other and things. Uh, why was I excited to see this movie? Why is it disappointing to me? What was I looking for when I saw this movie? Well, I am a fan of Donald Sutherland. Um, I love Ordinary People, which is on my top 10 movies of all time list. It's actually in my top three of all time. I'm also a fan of A Time to Kill, which he is also in. He plays Matthew McConaughey's the guy he looks up to and kind of the person he tries to mold himself after as far as being a lawyer. So it obviously this is a younger role for Donald Sutherland, and I have always known about the show MASH. My parents watched it. I didn't necessarily watch it. I didn't get into it, but it's a very, very famous show, and I know of it. And I had no idea Donald Sutherland was in the movie version of it. I know roughly the cast of the show, but I didn't realize that there was a different cast in the movie. And until maybe 10, 11 years ago, didn't know it was a movie. I just thought it was a show. So once I realized it was a movie and I had Donald Sutherland in it, I said, well, maybe one day I'll want to watch the show. That way, if I see the movie, I'll basically see what we're setting ourselves up for, and I will have a better, smoother transition into the show if I watch the movie. So those are the basic reasons why I wanted to watch it. And in all blunt, brutal honesty, this movie has not aged well. And even saying that it hasn't aged well, I'm actually very, very surprised that it was popular when it came out. Just because to me it is so terrible, and like I said, I know I'm going to get some pushback from this. I know that there are people who love this movie. Clearly, critically acclaimed. Clearly, the audience loves it. But I personally think it is an absolutely terrible movie. So why do I think this? Well, first of all, Donald Sutherland, Elliot Gould, and Tom, Duke, Forrest, Hawkeye, and Trapper. Basically, let's call them Duke, Hawkeye, and Trapper. They are the biggest a-hole bullies that you'll ever meet in your life. They are completely unredeemable, I would say. I mean, obviously, they're saving lives during the war, and that's their redeemableness. But they are the cockiest, just worst people in the entire world. So when we're first introduced to them, Hawkeye basically lies about who he is. It's a funny joke, I guess. And he escorts another guy to a mess hall where all the doctors hang out. Immediately, the people who are running this area don't recognize him, and they approach them. They're like, "Wait a minute, who are you? Tell us who you are now." And they just go about treating everyone like they just are complete jerks to everyone. Basically, what it seemed like to me is that they know that they're great surgeons, and because of this, they feel like they're allowed to talk down to people, that they're allowed to just be like, "What do you mean? Who am I?" And stuff like that. But I guess they do it in trying to do like a goofy and kidding manner about it, but it just doesn't come off. And then right away, I realized what's going to be happening in this movie when he calls a commanding officer Lieutenant Dish. Now, this is a female character, and he calls her this because he thinks that she's just very attractive. She's a fine dish, this woman. And it calls her Lieutenant Dish. And then you don't see her a lot in the rest of the movie, but when you see her, they call her Lieutenant Dish. I think one of them ends up sleeping with her at some point in the movie. She's married, so Apparently, these surgeons are just so magnetizing, so manly that she just completely foregoes her oath of marriage and sleeps with this guy who's a complete asshole. Later on in the movie, you meet another kind of commanding officer named Margaret O'Houlihan. Now, Margaret O'Houlihan is kind of at first, she's a very by the book, straight nosed person. She hears that there's a group, like this group is unruly, and this group tries to kind of like take advantage of things. And at first, she is going to her commanding officers. She's going to Major Frank Burns, played by Robert Duvall, and she's like, "What are we going to do about this? Something has to be done about this. I'm formally filing a complaint because I've seen things that shouldn't be happening around here." And they kind of say, like, "What do you mean? What are you talking about? I can't possibly. These guys are famous surgeons. I can't possibly do anything about this." And that's it. On to the next scene. Eventually, Frank Burns, who is married and like very devout in his religion, he's very religious. He ends up sleeping with Margaret O'Houlihan, and somehow his hut is bugged to where everyone can hear what's going on. Donald Sutherland and Hawkeye and Trapper end up creating this atmosphere where they can hear everything that's going on in the tent as they're having sex. At some point, she says that her lips are hot, and then the whole rest of the movie, she's called Hot Lips O'Houlihan, which she also complains about. This ends up infuriating Major Frank Burns. He's basically been bullied here. When everyone sees him, they make fun of him. And he ends up attacking Hawkeye after Hawkeye starts like really just going in on him, making fun of him for this incident that happened. And then they end up taking Frank Burns away in a straitjacket because they think he's crazy for attacking Hawkeye, which doesn't make any sense at all. He's not crazy. He's being bullied. He's being made fun of, and they're causing a very terrible atmosphere and a very terrible life for him and for Margaret for O'Houlihan. They're making their lives absolute shit, and in order to remedy the situation, they take Frank Burns away in a straitjacket. Later on in the movie as well, Margaret O'Houlihan is taking a shower, and in some way they're able to kind of raise the curtain of the shower, and everyone sees her naked, and then she like really flies off the handle. Like at this point, she's humiliated. Everyone's calling her Hot Lips O'Houlihan. She's being bullied. She's made fun of. She's been ridiculed. They are just treating her like terribly. And she goes to her commanding officer and she says, "Hey, like, I need a report written up about this. Like, I need something done here." And again, she's just, what do you want? What do you want me to do? These boys will be boys. You can't be upset at guys for being guys, And it's just, man, it's so rough. It's so rough to watch. And then eventually at the end of the movie, she has this like upside down arc where first of all, at the end of the movie, the higher ups who are higher up than the majors and these people who are just brushing her off, they end up getting her complaints, and they come down personally to investigate and to say something has to be done about this. Like, we can't have our soldiers having this terrible quality of life. And as these guys who are higher ups who are saying this are trying to make these demands, they start to talk about football. And they say, "Oh, does your MASH unit have a football team?" Like, yeah, we have a football team. We play all the time. He's like, well, it'd be great if our football team played your football team. We could bet $5,000 on it. We have a pretty good football team. We can't be beat. Like, oh, we love football. We're men. Let's not talk about this O'Houlihan girl anymore. We are men. We talk about football. You know? And they're like, well, what about her complaint? Oh, who cares about her complaints? We have a game going on next week. That's what matters. And the game the following week, she's a cheerleader. And she's knows nothing about the game. She's pretending like she's this complete idiot throughout the entire game. The things that are like anyone just watching a game, even if you don't know anything about football, you're watching the game, there are things you pick up, but there are things you recognize that are happening. None of this catches on. She's the blonde bimbo cheerleader with nothing in her head. She devolves completely from an authority figure, this high rank in the military. It's the 70s. You don't have a lot of high ranking female officers, as she completely devolves into a know-nothing, empty-headed bobblehead, basically, on the field. And it's rough to watch. Besides that, there's a lot of racism in the movie. At some point, they go to Japan, and while they're driving to Japan, they start making like racist noises with their mouth. Also, a really confusing thing to me as well. There's a player on the football team at the end of the movie. He is actually a real life football player and actor, and he is named Spear Chucker, I think Jones or something, but his nickname is Spear Chucker, which I'm assuming is a racist term dating back to like maybe in Africa when tribes would throw spears at each other, was my thinking behind this. But he is not a quarterback. He's like a running back or something. I don't know anything about football. I could talk to you in ad nauseum about baseball, but I don't know anything about football. But anyway, he's not a quarterback. He takes the ball and he runs with it in every play. So how does the nickname Spear Chucker even work if you're not chucking spears, if you're not throwing footballs? I don't know. The football game at the end is ridiculous. There are some laughs in it. I'm kind of concerned that every doctor in the hospital is allowing themselves to play football and possibly get injured horrifically on the field when they're needed actually in the operating room. But I guess maybe I'm just digging too deep there. There is a point in the football game where the other team has a ringer as well on their team, and he gets injured. And there's also another player who gets very injured on the other opposing team, and he clearly has a concussion. He is just running around doing stupid things, acting like he has no idea where he is. Clearly, this man is injured with a brain injury, and they basically just like treat him like he's an idiot. Oh, sit down. You're ruining the game. Stop with your crazy shenanigans. It's like, this guy is really injured. I think maybe you should have him treated by like one of your doctors that's on the field. I don't know. That's an idea. There's also another scene in this movie where there's this man who is heavily endowed physically, if you know what I'm talking about. He ends up trying to sleep with someone in between surgeries or whatever he does. I think he's a dentist. This guy's a dentist. He ends up trying to sleep with a female, and he ends up not being able to do the deed. And in that way, he feels like he's no longer a man. And he says, I think I'm gay because I wasn't able to be aroused by this woman one time. And Hawkeye says, no, you're not gay. This happens to everyone. He's like, it doesn't happen to me. I've lost all my manliness, and I have no reason to live. Tonight, I'm going to commit suicide. Because he thinks he's gay, he's going to commit suicide. It's okay. So Hawkeye devises this plan where he has this Last Supper type of meal, and then he ends up getting this girl that he's sleeping with to sleep with this guy to prove that this guy can get aroused. Basically, the women in this movie, it doesn't matter how high of a position they hold in the military, they're basically there to be ridiculed, to be slept with, to cheat on their husbands. They're basically there as props. They are basically props in this movie, which is sad, and it's just terrible. And I prefer movies of empowered women, not movies like this. This is also why I hated that Wizard of Oz movie that I reviewed. When you have movies like this, and they're just racist, they're full of bullies, and it's impossible to watch. The surgery scenes are good, but after a while, basically, if you've seen one, you've seen them all. There's no real change between them except maybe one surgery. They need to stop the bleeding on his arm. But it's basically all the same. It's just, I think it's fillers for what's supposed to be shenanigans. And at the end of the movie, there's this loudspeaker. There's a guy on a loudspeaker throughout the whole movie who's trying to add some comedy in between by not pronouncing words correctly, or by it's supposed to be funny, but it's not really. But anyway, this guy on the loudspeaker at the end says, basically tries to summarize the movie by saying that these doctors are in the horrors of war, and they have to learn how to have fun, play tricks on each other, goof around, and survive these atrocities that are happening around them, and in order to make it through war onto the other side. I understand that, but they're just bullying. But there's just three guys bullying everyone, and no one stands up to them. And when someone tries to stand up to them, someone else tells them not to, or someone else says, or Hawkeye some guy will try to be discipline him, and they'll be just like, "You're not disciplining me. Here's what you're gonna do," and he tells them what he's gonna do, and he walks away. It's like, this guy's a complete pompous jerk. They're all pompous jerks. I don't understand how this movie is funny. I never laughed throughout this entire movie. I don't understand how anyone ever saw this movie to be funny. And it really bothers me on a very high level that it's on AFI's top 100. It's on AFI's top 100 comedies, and that it's getting such a high rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It makes me feel like I don't know, like I saw this movie, a different movie than what everyone else saw. I don't know if it's just because it has aged badly, but how long has Rotten Tomatoes been around? I mean, there has to be some modern day voting on this, right? I mean, it wasn't around in the 70s. There were no computers then. So people are still watching this movie today and still giving it high scores, which I don't, unless they've saw the TV show and not the movie and just ranked it based on the television show, or maybe they thought they were rating the television show and they got it wrong. I would love anyone out there to tell me how I'm wrong about this, because it's just an appalling movie, and I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. It's just bad, and I was very saddened by how bad this movie was, because I really wanted it to be good. 2 out of 10. And that's it. That's all for this review. Thank you for listening to me ramble, and have a good night. I'll see you next time.